I want to ask you a question and get your take on this. So, in selecting a business that you either own or you want to operate a business or even otherwise, do you think that you control your behavior? So there's a little quiz that's going to pop up here. If you could answer that and just let me know, do you think you control your behavior? And while that's going, you guys are answering, there's a QR code that you can pop on there and reach out if you want to talk to a franchise broker, or if you need any help or research from us, we can support you with that. All right, so we got about half and half. Half of you think you control your behavior and half of you think you do not. Interesting. We're about half and half. So the neuroscience says it this way. Neuroscientist Benjamin Libet, he has a study called the Libet's Free Will Experiment. And this is also cited in the Incognito book. And in this one, the researchers showed that the brain initiates movement nearly half a second before the individual is consciously deciding to move. This means that our subconscious mind is driving decisions before we are even aware of making those decisions. Now, this is the part where it starts to get a little weird in here, because if we don't control what we're doing, what can we control? And when we're a business owner, we need control here. We need control over the selection of the business, and we need control over the outcome of the business. So how do we overcome these variables that have so much power over our decision-making and our actions? Let's go through them one by one. So the first one, the blind spot. When we're dealing with blind spots as a business owner, there's this other critical aspect that people don't talk about as often, and that is that successful entrepreneurs, they rarely rely solely on their judgment. They typically build expert teams, and those teams help them. So for example, when buying a franchise, maybe the investor would rely on a franchise broker, a franchise attorney, an accountant, maybe a funding consultant or expert. They would have a financial advisor, mentors, and all of these people surrounding them would help them to see hidden gaps, blind spots that they are not recognizing are there. And so these professionals help them to see if their decisions are grounded in reality instead of unconscious assumptions. So both before the business selection and while they're in business, it's really important that that owner or potential owner has this process where they've created a feedback loop to help them get what they're missing and what they're not seeing, especially when they're doing something that's totally brand new to them, because the neural pathways in their brain for that project or process are immature and they're underdeveloped. And when you're in that early stage endeavor, you don't have the connections that are in place that you need to have. And so the way to overcome this is to find people who have strong clarity about what the blind spots are, how to avoid them, and who have spent a lot of time themselves creating that expertise and all those neural pathways that help them to see what others miss. So to continue with the franchise example, the expert team, they would have built these neural pathways because they're doing regular, consistent activities like assessing financial evaluations or resale evaluations. They're looking at franchise legal reviews. Maybe they're looking at regular franchise disclosures. Maybe they are constantly or continually hearing from validation calls on of owners that are already in the franchise systems. Or maybe they're consistently reviewing a ton of franchise inventory that allows them to see comparables between those business concepts. The second thing to overcome are those pre-existing neural connections and networks, right? So you're not going into business to be who you've always been. You're going into business to become better than you were. But those new neural pathways, they take time to build. And so there's this new process of decision making and new habits and new behaviors that make the new and improved you possible. And so you literally become a different person as a business owner, but better. And that is not an easy or fast process. It's new and it requires consistent and prolonged exposure to those better decision-making processes. And that's another one of the reasons why franchising is so helpful, because when you're in the business owner process, the franchise puts on these guardrails so that you can learn while those new pathways of operating as a leader and a business owner are being embedded, literally embedded into your brain. Now, that process of mapping those new connections, it needs a lot of redirecting, a lot of reinforcing, a lot of repetition so that those new habits and skills stay. And franchising does a particularly good job of that because they have a team and systems that help support you in that process. And so they help you to build your brain a bit differently. There's this author, James Clear. I'm sure I've mentioned him before because I absolutely love one of his quotes. He has the book Atomic Habits, and he says in his main line of his quote is that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I think that this is because the neural pathways have to be paved in your brain, and the systems to create those new pathways and keep you in the lane, repeating those right behaviors have to be formed. And that's what a good franchise does. It gives you the systems and structures to keep you on the right track. All right, so the next one, the third one, is the chemical feels and that deep unconscious bias that can be overcome if you're aware of it. So the chemical feels, this is a hard one because it can be as powerful as a drug. It is literally a chemical reaction in your brain, and your brain is responding to different stimuli with these chemicals. And so how in the world are we going to change that? Well, it starts with first, consciously choosing to be open-minded and curious, even if you have learned and programmed behavior or biases and they pop up. When you're asking more questions instead, and you start the process of asking questions instead of being like really stuck in your own views or your own decisiveness, well, that usually gets you more answers when you're open to it. And so when you have more answers, you have new information, and that makes it easier to make clearer choices along the way. So here's a few things that we would just suggest that we've noticed about this particular one. So almost 100% of the prospects, the prospective franchise owners, they don't end up where they initially started. And the reason why, if you think about it, if you just imagine that someone is kind of determined to open, let's say, an ice cream shop, and the reason is because unconsciously or subconsciously, they have this sense of nostalgia from being a child and having the chemical reaction of that good memory of a child in an ice cream shop, not stop. So when we dig in, we find out that they would actually be pretty financially stretched if they went that direction. And maybe they have kind of young children at home. And so they didn't realize that they would be working the opposite schedule of their children, and that would be keeping them away from their family on nights and weekends. So if they chose to open that ice cream shop, they would ultimately be unhappy with their total life picture. But if they looked at another franchise model with maybe a lower investment that had more family-friendly hours, well, then that may emerge as a much better fit, providing those initial feelings providing that those initial feelings can really be misleading without having really objective analysis. So almost 100% of the people, they don't end up where they started. So I just encourage you to challenge your perceptions by asking more questions and learning more. The next one is the business models. Business models matter. To overcome the chemical feelings, it requires education. And most people don't even think about the business model that they're going into. And we would say that that's a mistake, because the business model is how the revenue flows into that business. And if you're going to stay in business, that's a really big one to figure out and to understand before you make a decision to go for it. We have an upcoming webinar that's going to happen on the 26th, and that one is called How Business Models and Markets Help You Pick a Business to Own. And in that, we're going to do a deep dive into the business models and that topic. If you want to type webinar in the chat, we'll send you the link to register on that one. And then finally, we would suggest that you plan ways to help you change the chemical composition of your feels as a business owner. So you have to give yourself almost Pavlovian conditioning. So if you are familiar with Pavlov's dog Pavlov in an experiment would ring a bell every time he would feed his dog. And so the dog got used to the conditioning of hearing the bell ring and then salivating, getting up, wagging his tail, getting excited for the food's arrival. We have to get you to condition yourself on those specific milestones as well for success in your business. And this one is hard for people because it kind of seems silly. You don't want to be a cheerleader in your business, but you do have to condition yourself for wins. And one way to do it is to create those bell ringing every time you do a notable or substantial item. Like, let's say every time you get a customer appointment, you ring a bell, or your employee rings a bell. You have to kind of set up these systems for wins to condition yourself to feel the momentum of the business. And I want to make a note here, because this is one where people can get really caught on. They will sometimes make the wins too big and too far out, and you can't do that when you're starting a business. It has to be focused on certain wins that are smaller, they're forward movement types of steps in the process, so that you can start to build the chemicals and feel the excitement and the energy of the win build as you're launching your business or finding your business. And that process of kind of building rewards into your system, it goes way, way further than people realize. And the brain's chemical reactions actually explains why this works so well. Your brain needs certain stimuli to release the chemicals in your brain, and all of that you control as a business owner. You control what you celebrate, how you celebrate, and how you build wins. You can control what the mini wins are. You can control the momentum, and the momentum is what your employees and your customers are all watching to see how confident they feel in the success of the business. And once you have that momentum, you just take it, don't let it go. And when you don't have it, you create it. Because as a business owner, there's a really different way of thinking and behaving. And when you're learning this new language of business ownership, you're also learning about leadership and accountability and financial prudence. You're learning about management and behavioral understanding of your employees and your customers. And you get this larger awareness of all of that. And when you're going into these higher levels of awareness, what happens is the results create different kinds of feels. These are the feels that last longer and that are accompanied with wisdom and steadiness and really profound growth. So when you start to research a business to own or you start to operate one, you have to protect yourself from your brain's automatic responses. And that means you have to have a system to overcome your blind spots by building an expert team. You have to have a system in place to stop the old patterns in your brain that created the old you, and then build new patterns to create the new you. And you have to set up new chemical reactions that encourage your growth by stimulating the chemicals in your brains with new inputs, new rewards, and new reactions that serve you and your business and your life goals. And there's just a lot going on inside of that big, beautiful brain of yours. Let's respect it for getting you this far. And let's also work with it a little bit differently to help to get you to the next level in business and in life. So, for all of our Instagram followers and our TikTok viewers, this next section has materials. So if you would please join us on the webinar link. We're going to drop that link in the chat, and then you can click on it and we'll see you there. And then for everyone else, I'd like to, at this time, welcome Adrienne Lee to the webinar. She's going to take you through those franchise brands. Adrienne?
Perfect. Thank you. And I just wanted to start by talking a little bit about why we picked these brands. And I guess a big part of it is they're under that kind of category of things you might not pick off a list and you might not think of initially. And it's one of the ways Sabrina was talking about, kind of that you don't know what you don't know and what's going on behind the scenes in your brain. So here's some brands you might not have thought of on your own, might not have picked out, but when you really look at the elements of what makes them a good, strong brand, you might be really surprised once you dig into them a little farther of what a good fit they are for you when it comes to your skills and your talents and your values and your goals and how much money you want to make and all of those other elements. So with that said, let's start with the first one, which is US Lawns. And again, I don't think anybody woke up this morning thinking, hey, I'd like to have a lawn care business and landscaping business, but they are the number one commercial lawn care company in the country. And I want to emphasize that commercial lawn care. That's very different than the people that are coming around all your neighborhoods with the mow and blow kind of mentality. And by working with strictly commercial properties, it is a higher ticket item and it does have recurring revenue. So a couple of very strong elements there. What they do is lawn renovation. They also do seasonal color for the northern climates. They also do snow removal. And I want to emphasize also that there's no experience necessary for this. They don't expect you to come from this kind of background. In fact, they have a lot of C-level executives that join their team. Your employees are more blue collar, so no experience is needed. Training can be provided, and you can really hire for attitude and train people easily. And when you're creating your own company culture, if you're providing that significant kind of leadership, it can be a very low turnover business, actually. But lawn care, commercial lawn care in particular, in landscaping, is about over $100 billion industry. And this really gives you the opportunity to start small and then scale. The goal is to have your second truck on the road by 6 months. So that's a pretty good goal for the franchisor. They have an inside sales team at the home office that calls commercial properties in your new territory and sets appointments for you to help you ramp up quickly. And if you want to continue to ramp up more rapidly, you can continue to work with that inside sales team as well. But it is a great place for the technology that they have also. They use Google Analytics that gives them information that they can use in their proposals for the client and for measuring and estimates without having to go out on site to do every single estimate. And they're owned by Brightview. So without going into all the details for the sake of time, it does give them incredible discounts on things like John Deere and Toro, other equipment that you might need. And the goal really is to provide that white glove service that makes you stand out in a kind of ho-hum world of competition of the mom and pop independents. So this is another brand that fits a category that we've talked about in prior webinars where If you can find a fragmented industry, it may look like there's a lot of competition because there's a lot of mom and pops out there. But when you come in with a franchise behind you and the level of sophistication that they can have in terms of technology and marketing and all of the other elements that make them such a strong business, it really is easy to compete effectively. They have a sales boot camp bi-monthly that franchisees can attend and other online trainings and video tutorials, not just for the franchisees, but for their employees as well. Um, Almost half of their franchisees own multiple territories. So it says something about the degree of happiness and ambition that their franchisees have as well. And the total investment is between 113,000 and 200,000. So with that, number one, move on to Made Pro. And Made Pro, again, might not be a business you woke up thinking about, but residential cleaning is a huge industry, $6.2 billion industry, and it's incredibly recession resistant. You might be surprised to find how many people actually do maintain their residential cleaning service, even when they've lost their job, even in the downturn of an economy. MaidPro's been around for a long time, and they can show that longevity and consistency, even during COVID and the 2008 2009 recession. They've won just about every award you can win, from best franchise to own, best in category, and a number of other awards. But they're really strong in state of the art software, creative marketing. They've got great brand identity and a truly proven business strategy. And they are constantly evolving to really be the best and provide the best practices for the industry. Again, it starts with a low investment, but you can really grow and scale the business very well. In fact, there's a number of people that move into more semi-absentee ownership, which this business lends itself very well to after some time. And I do want to emphasize after some time. They have their Made Pro University training program, and that again gives training not just for the franchisees, but for your employees as well, which is a really important element when you do have new employees and you're adding employees, and there can be some turnover in this industry. So again, with leadership, you can minimize that turnover by providing a really strong place to live, and it's can be a really fun business. A lot of people are surprised to find that a vast majority, I think over 50% of the franchisees within MaidPro have some kind of advanced degree. They have doctors, they have lawyers, they have many MBAs, all kinds of advanced degrees, and they all have a work hard, play hard attitude. And a lot of them have developed real personal friendships, which I think is a benefit that most people get as a franchisee in any system. But MaidPro seems to take it to another level. Their franchisees frequently end up going on vacations together before or after the conferences and things like that. So it really is an interesting business. Again, if you take a little bit deeper look than if you just say, I don't like cleaning my own house. Why would I want to own a main service business? And the answer is you'll never clean your house again because you will have a service that does it. Your role in the business is not to clean homes. You're a higher level role at more of an executive level management. And with the strong systems that they have, you can build a very, very strong business. Total investment of 109,000 to 158,000. And our next business is actually even has the tagline, the best opportunity you never thought of. So you can see why that fits the category that we're talking about here today. But again, let's look at all the elements that make it such a great industry and such a great company. It's a very low investment, but can have a very high return. And I do want to emphasize lowering the investment does not mean lowering your returns. You can build very large businesses even when you've invested very little money. It's a great lifestyle business. Primarily, it's Monday through Friday. It's a very fragmented industry. So while a lot of people have the impression that most people just go to Home Depot or Lowe's or used to be J.C. Penney's to go get their window shades and blinds, they really don't. All of those together have less than 10% market share, which means, once again, it's that very fragmented industry, and primarily you're competing against independent mom pop type businesses. It's very technology proof and Amazon proof. People don't buy their blinds online for the most part because they do want somebody else to be responsible for taking those measurements and making sure that when those custom blinds are made, which everything is custom in the industry, it comes to them correctly. Um, it's very recession resistant. There's steady demand in all economic environments. Window shades and window blinds, window coverings in general, truly are a need. You can't build a new house and move into it and not have window shades in your bedroom or your bathroom. So certainly you need things there. It's also something that people look at frequently every time they move. Window shades also break and people replace them rather than fixing them because it's just about as economically viable. And a lot of people these days are also getting rid of the shades that have the strings that you pull, which can be a hazard for kids and for pets, and putting in um, either automatic blinds that go up and down with the punch of a button, or some that you can just lift and raise on the blinds themselves. It's a really low risk industry, given that it is something that every home and really every business needs. I talked to a builder one time, and he was looking at going into this business primarily because, as a builder, a home builder, he said that what they wanted to do was they wanted to provide a ready to go house when people moved in. The one thing that he couldn't crack the nut on was window blinds. He said, we can put in flooring, we could put in wall coverings, we can put in all the appliances. What we can't do is we can't do window blinds. There's just too many choices. So when people move in, they do need those window blinds. So there's always a need, but it's a very simple, clear cut model. You really don't have to have any employees if you don't want. You can act in the role of the salesperson, which is really warm calls going out to people that have stuck their hand up in response to some kind of marketing and said, yes, I'm interested, come show me. And this is a mobile business, so you're taking those designs to them in their homes. You can do the measuring with a laser tool that they have. You can show them the options that they have on an iPad, where you can take a picture and show what the different options will look like against their walls and their furniture, and makes it very easy to give them an estimate on the spot, which also gives them a higher closing ratio. But there's no site required, no inventory because everything is custom ordered. Even the fact that it's custom ordered, there's a couple advantages aside from no inventory. People pay 50% upfront, 50% on installation. So you're covering the cost before you ever order the inventory that is the blinds that are going to be installed. And then you get the payment when you pick it up. So there's no accounts receivable. They have a fantastic integrated IT platform. They were actually a technology company before they were ever a window blind company, which is kind of an interesting story. But they've got great support from that standpoint, and their CRM manages every aspect of the business from scheduling and task management, proposals, marketing automation, and all the way through managing billing and collections. For commercial accounts, the franchisor will actually pay for the materials up front, bill the client, and pay you when they receive payment 30 days or whenever down the line, because they know that most franchisees don't want to wait 30 days to get that money and be out their own money in the meantime. So they've got that covered. So very cash flow friendly business. So with all of those elements behind it, you can see why I say this really is an incredible business that you might never have thought of, but when you look at the elements that make it function so smoothly, it really is an interesting business. And the total investment is 111,000 to 145,000. And moving to our next one, we have, give me one second, Everline. And I lost Everline. um, so Everline is, give me one second. Sorry. Okay. So Everline, my apologies. They are a very rapidly growing line striping and pavement maintenance service business. They really are an industry disruptor. There's never been a leader in this industry before, and they've really reformatted their approach to sales and approaching it as um, a maintenance issue rather than just when owners are in desperate need, which is typically how the competition approaches it. But they also have an actual thermal technology that really is a better, longer lasting product for striping. So, while on the one hand, they do this for things like parking lots and the exterior, it's also things that's used for interior as well, for warehouses and other internal type of projects. They can also do stenciling for branding and crosswalks and driveway striping. And so primarily, this is a B2B opportunity, which is most definitely a recurring revenue stream. Your customers are building owners and commercial property managers and general contractors. And once again, we've got very fragmented, unsophisticated competition that typically gives a very poor experience compared to Everline. And Everline does very well with close to closing rate of about 60% on their bids. So this is a really high demand business. It is recession resistant. They've got incredible systems, incredible training. And believe it or not, it is about a $29 billion industry. And no one, again, has even a 5% market share. But what you're really selling to people is you're selling savings through maintenance rather than replacement. So again, it's that focus on maintenance rather than just being there when things have gotten so bad that they're having to do things in an emergency. But it is a franchise system that was founded by franchisees. It's built for franchisees. They really have the expertise and the support systems in place to ensure that franchisees ramp up quickly and are able to scale rapidly. They have great technology for putting down the paint and for all of the systems that they have for doing the bids and following up on the proposals. One of the things when you're talking to customers also, I focused on the savings aspect, but this also really limits liability, which makes this a safety business as well. Because in the United States, if you trip on a crack and break a bone or go over a bump and damage your car or go through a crosswalk where you can't see the lines and you hit someone, you've got a lawsuit. And by doing proper maintenance, it proves that the owner has been responsible and it limits that liability. Another thing, 68% of shoppers say that the appearance of a parking lot makes a difference in where they shop. So you can also appeal to people from the standpoint of increasing their business. And obviously, cost savings in sealing cracks today prevents having to fill potholes tomorrow. So aside from, I focused on the technology of filling cracks and striping and things like that, but they also do parking lot sweeping, power washing, and repair. Their infrared technology in repairing the potholes, I mentioned the technology that they have that's a thermal bond that really prevents water from getting back in and also allows for recycling of about 90% of the materials that are used. And it's a very fast process, so people don't have to stay off the parking lot for long periods of time. And the paint is a sprayable plastic that lasts 3 to 4 times longer than regular paint. So they've got a 93% total satisfaction of their franchisees, which is incredibly high. And I could go on for probably another half hour on Everline alone. There's a lot of really positive elements about it, but they start with a very lean equipment package, truck, trailer, and all the equipment that fits in a trailer. It can be run from a home or small commercial storage place. And they do electronic bids, which in this industry, no one does electronic bids, which is another way of standing out. And another way that you can see that franchisors provide you with a lot of support and tools to be successful in a market that is dominated by mom and pops. And we've got a total investment of $185,000 to $319,000. Floor Coverings International has been around for a long time. They're an incredibly strong franchise. really a blue chip company that's owned by First Service Brands. And First Service is the parent company of other big brand names you may have heard of, like CertaPro Painting, Pillar to Post Home Inspection, Paul Davis Restoration, California Closet. But what Floor Coverings International is really a retail business that's a mobile showroom for the flooring industry. And it, it's really, this is an opportunity to be part of something really different where you're kind of aligned with Amazon. The flooring industry is the largest interior remodeling industry of all of the entire industry. 70% of flooring sales are retail, and they're really a disruptor. What they do is they provide what are typically female decision makers a preferred shop at home experience, and they are number one in customer satisfaction. It's a great business from the standpoint of scalability and also very few employees. The top 50% of their franchisees achieve very large businesses with literally nothing more than themselves, an office administration person, and 1 to 2 salespeople. And they simply scale by adding mobile showrooms, which essentially means you're adding additional vans with an additional salesperson. They've proven to be very Amazon resistant, recession resistant, Corona virus resistant. They're truly an essential service, and they were hot all the way through 2020. Their diversified marketing programs do a lot in the way of marketing automation for connecting with realtors or restoration companies. And those are some of the things that help to make them recession resistant. But their shop at home model is also really appealing to most customers. What Floor Coverings International does is really delivers 5 key things. They build equity, they provide great earning potential, they give an opportunity to build your own culture and really treat your staff well, your salespeople in particular, and therefore other employees also can really be paid very, very well, still leaving a nice profit for you at the end. But it gives you the opportunity for real work-life balance as well as being in control of your own destiny and the opportunity to make your own decisions. So some of the things that make them so strong with the systems they have, again, a very high close rate of close to 50% on the calls that they go out on. We've talked about the size of the industry and the fact that, again, it's a very fragmented industry, kind of like window blinds, where, again, Home Depot and Lowe's have only 7% market share, but 70% of the business is also retail. And retail is just not as consumer friendly when you talk about people having to go to that retail store, pick up samples, bring them home, see them there, bring them back. This makes it much easier for them to get assistance with their choices in their own home. They do have vendor relationships directly with the manufacturers, not distributors. So they're on the same buying tier as Home Depot and Lowe's, which also gives you an opportunity to be very competitive in pricing. They do a lot, the franchisor does a lot to assist you with hiring and training of your employees. And the installation teams are very easy in this business to be subcontracted and get great reviews by just providing the supervision and leadership as you're both hiring them and you're checking on the quality of the work as it's completed, because they really are widely known for their customer service. Lots of great elements about this business as well, and very scalable. Every territory has room for at least 3 mobile showrooms. And while they do want people to start on a full-time basis, many people do move into more of a semi-absentee role over time. And the total investment for Floor Coverings International is $182,000 to $247,000. And moving on to Pestmaster. Pestmaster is interesting in that it's not just a B2B model, but it's actually more focused on getting government contracts. And we'll talk about that in a minute. First to say, pest control. I'm sure when I said there were businesses we were talking about today that you didn't wake up thinking about pest control. Pest control is right up there at the top of the list. They do have about 52 categories of the kind of bugs and vermin that they go after, but primarily it's mosquitoes, birds, rodents, termites, wildlife, ants, bed bugs, general pest. They also do vegetation management. So, as an example, airports have to be completely weed free in any of those cracks that they might have in their tarmacs. They manage aquatic weeds, aquatic pests, water treatment facilities for algae. Mosquitoes are really a big um, element of the business because mosquitoes are still the deadliest pest today on a worldwide scale. So it does vary depending on your territory, from iguanas in Florida to raccoons in Washington, but lots of different elements. This is not just a single revenue stream, as you can imagine. But Pestmaster's been around for about 45 years old. 80% of their revenue comes from the government contracts world. So that's hospitals and military bases, police departments, transportation facilities. I already mentioned airports, but they also do bus stations, train stations, government buildings, multifamily apartment units. They have a lot of different commercial accounts. But with the government contract, typically those are contract based and all 3 to 5 years in length on those contracts. The franchisor has a 4-person government contract team that really assists in learning about the facility and pricing contracts to help you bid appropriately. So the heavy lifting is really on the franchisor, and the proposal is submitted by the franchisor. So they really are very closely involved and aligned with you all the way through in your business. A lot of the other commercial work they do is what you would call government adjacent. So it's pretty easy to go from military hotels to Hilton's and other hotels. They're the number one service to the Veterans Affairs Centers and commercial hospitals. Their newest segment is residential. So after 40 years in the government, it's pretty easy to make that transition here. And once again, very recession resistant. So what happens when the economy goes down? Government spending goes up. In the last year, their business went up 53%. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of recession resistance. They're very eco-friendly. They're one of the top integrated pest management providers. And what that means is there's a 6-point pyramid where you see, just as an example, you stop rodents from getting into the building first, no pesticides. You block them from getting in, and then there's 6 steps that you go through before you even get to pesticides. They've got an incredibly strong culture. A number of their franchisees have been with them 10 years, 20 years. A great majority have been with them for longer than 5 years. So very, very solid brand with very happy franchisees. They do have an on-staff entomologist who's a PhD that really helps franchisees understand any issues that they have, and he's an incredible value to the team. And there is licensing required in this, but the franchisor helps you attain that licensing. And that licensing barrier for independence really is a barrier to entry. So it's a less competitive field than some out there. And the total investment is $103,000 to $206,000. And I think that takes us through the ones that I had. So Sabrina, I will turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adrienne. So I want to let everyone know that whenever you're going through the process of trying to figure out what business or franchise might be right for you, it's a very custom experience. You have to look at who you are first and then what you're trying to accomplish, and then find the franchise brand that matches it. And so we go through many different franchise options in many categories. So we're going to click to the next slide. There's franchises in all different categories that you may not even be aware of. We only had a few minutes here to go over a small sampling of brands, but there's hundreds and hundreds of them that we can share with you on a closer inspection. Next. I do want to give a disclaimer. This disclaimer is saying that essentially any financial information that you would use to assess a franchise has to come from the franchise disclosure document and the agreement with the franchisor. So they're the ones that provide that information to you in the process. And go to the next slide. So just to kind of wrap things up and let you know, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you guys taking the time to learn about franchising and to learn about the chemicals in our brain and the things that could potentially stop us from being what we're truly meant to be. We have so much potential inside of us, and it's just getting that potential to come out, but with the right structure, supports, and props in place to make sure that it's done in a way that gets you the results that you're looking for. We do have the QR code, so if you want to talk to any of our team members, we can support you with that process. If you have any questions at all, you can call the number on the screen. If you want to register for the webinar next on the 26th, you can message us webinar, and we'd be happy to send you that registration. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate your time. I hope you guys have a really great week, and we'll see you soon. Bye now.